You're listening to Cofield Company
on ESPN Las Vegas.
All right, here we go to Wednesday. Let's get to our legal spot. Dan Lust, Conduct Detrimental Podcast, is up with us here. Lots of good stuff to get into. Let me correct that. Professor! How are you, Professor?
I'm good. It makes me sound very fancy when you say professor, but I got to stay true to my roots. This is a sports law. We're pretty cool at sports law.
Explain to the audience what happened for you today. It was really cool, right?
Yes. So I've Steve, as you know, I present and I'm like a guest lecturer at law schools and colleges around the country. And one of those schools, a law school in New York City called New York Law School, actually asked me to be a full-time, well, not full-time, I guess I'm an adjunct, but to teach their class every Mondays for the next 2 semesters. So I'm now professor of sports law.
Love it. Love it. Dan Lust is with us. All right, so let's get to some big news going on the legal front. Before we do that, are you a Jets or a Giants fan?
I'm a Giants fan.
Of course. The Raiders are coming to take on the Giants in what could be a battle for, early playoff look in November. What do you think?
I hope you're kidding. Neither of these teams are playoff teams.
You don't think so? Not the Giants?
I mean, listen, if 7-9 can win the division, I guess the Giants are in play, but I am not that optimistic.
Now let's get it right. 7 wins means you now have 10 losses, my friend. 17 games.
7-10.
Whoa.
Listen,
you know
I
what?
trust this man because he talks about the Giants like a
it.
Giants fan.
Yeah, a glass half full, I guess. We'll see, though. We'll see. There's a lot of work to be done, but they were 1 game out last year. We'll see if they can improve upon that this year.
Is Deshaun Watson going to be on the field for the Texans? Do we have a settlement coming soon? Why? It's gotten real quiet the last month or so.
Yeah, I see people that are reading the silence, and truthfully, this guy Tony Busby, the attorney for the 20-plus victims, every day was holding a news conference, posting on Instagram, and then he's gone silent. You asked my read on it. There was something that caused him to go silent. I know Rich Eisen over at the NFL Network is reporting that a settlement is in the works. Just in my practice, to settle this many different cases with different people of sensibilities, with a sensitive matter like this, it's almost impossible. So, I tend to think that the silence is not them working on a settlement. I think it's just as likely that the DA's office got in Tony Busby's ear and said, hey, don't say anything to mess up the case for the next month because we are, investigating this as a criminal case. So I don't necessarily think that no news is good news if you're Deshaun Watson. So I don't see him on the field week 1. I actually think the suspension could be potentially much longer than that.
Oh, wow. So May 12th has become, sort of a big day on the sports calendar. We know that used to be the case, and I still think it is to a certain extent with Triple Crown. Preakness has tons of controversy coming in, and actually there's some legal angles here. How is Bob Baffert's horse actually racing this weekend? What did they do legally to make sure this got done?
So it's interesting. I expected the suspension to come down from either the Kentucky Racing Commission or the Maryland Racing Commission. That's where Pimlico is. That's where the Preakness is going to be held on Saturday. I guess their hands were kind of tied. No suspension was issued, and there's nothing really keeping Baffert off the track. So I think Baffert was about to file what's called a temporary restraining order. It's like an emergency doctrine to kind of stop any bans. But Preakness kind of let him go, and they said, listen, any race results, we want to be transparent to the public, but we can't really stop you from racing. I think the legal mechanism we will see, if you read Bob Baffert's statement, he says that Medina Spirit is a deserved champion. He's going to fight for him. I think that's Bob Baffert basically saying, if you try to take away the Kentucky Derby win, which I think is probable at this point, if the second test confirms the first test that there was some, illegal substance in the horse's system, they're going to take away the Derby win. They're going to give it to Mandaloun, who finished in second. But I think Baffert's going to fight for that. Obviously, if you're a Kentucky Derby winning horse, that's going to help you, your price moving forward. So I think that's what Baffert's planning to do. I think he's going to, take this to whatever courts he needs to uphold at least that first win. And we'll see what happens on Saturday if Medina Spirit wins again.
How do you police the sport from drug cheats when you don't have a centralized boss? You don't have a commission. It makes it almost impossible, doesn't it?
Yes, I mean it does. I mean it's people were joking, right? Like Bob Baffert was in the LeBron James, Michael Jordan conversation. Now he's in the Lance Armstrong conversation for being kind of a maybe disgraced person that's in the record books. Baffert's had 5 medication violations for his horses in the last 365 days. The first step to cleaning up the sport occurred when the Kentucky Derby Churchill Downs suspended him from the track. Nothing. It's a private entity, right? Anybody can suspend Baffert's horses from the track. So we'll see. I can't rule it out. I think if the Kentucky Derby is the first to do it, it's certainly not going to be the last. So we'll see. I mean, that's step one to cleaning up the sport.
Doing a legal spot on a Wednesday. Dan Lust is with us. Sports Law Lust up on Twitter. All right, well, let's talk about it. I know you've been tracking this for a while. July 1st is actually going to be a big day on the sports calendar because I don't know how many states are going to have NIL rulings and laws and rules on the books, but many states do. What do you anticipate with college sports recruiting and the future of college sports with the NIL?
Yeah, so, it's been kind of a whirlwind to follow. Here's what you need to know as we really, less than basically 50 days out at this point to July 1st. College athletes are going to get paid. It's just a matter of when. It's a matter of where it happens first. On July 1st, 5 states across the country will have laws that allow athletes to receive compensation. All the laws are a little bit different, which I'm sure Steve will get into. But those states are Florida, Alabama, New Mexico, Georgia. I'm gonna miss the 5th one. Just trust me that there are 5.
Right.
Now, those states are going to get a massive recruiting edge. The transfer portal is obviously full of top talent. High school athletes are declaring, and trying to pick their schools. And, you'd be remiss to say, like, hey, if you can get paid right now, why wouldn't you go to a Florida over a Tennessee? So that's kind of what we're seeing. We're seeing I think top wide receiver went from Ohio State over to Alabama. I'm sure in part because he can get paid on July 1st. So that, it's impending. It's coming upon us. But yeah, it's going to create a whirlwind and a headache for the NCAA.
To that end, is there any legal recourse for, say, a university in a state that's being negatively affected by this? If you are Ohio State, do you have any way to fight this based on the fact that your state doesn't have a law like that?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I think the one that's going to fight it, if they do, is the NCAA, because Ohio doesn't really have standing to challenge a Florida-based law, but they can basically tell the NCAA, hey, listen, you have to challenge this. You have to file an injunction. An injunction is the same thing that Bob Baffert was going to attempt to do, to try to force a state's law to not be effective. The problem is, right, who's going to win, an NCAA, a private association, or state law? Florida, I'm talking about University of Florida, Miami, they have to go by state law unless some court tells them not to. So they're going to have much more disadvantageous consequences if they don't adhere to state law. So I do think that there's going to be a massive recruiting edge to those schools. We're already seeing it. And there's not much that these Ohio's and any other states really can do. And if you're following this in SEC country, 4 of the 5 states that have passed NIL laws are, in the Southeast. So, I think other ones are going to follow suit. We'll see. I think the 5th state is Mississippi, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, we're going to see a couple more states pass laws in between. I think Tennessee just passed one yesterday that goes into effect in January. So yeah, that July 1st date is really the beginning of some chaos.
And for those who might be joining this a little bit late, NIL, name, image, and likeness that these college athletes can be paid for in the states that we're mentioning. So Dan, as this evolves, as states do this individually, do you think we're going to see more of a push to see something from the federal level? Because I know it's something that's been discussed, at least informally, at the congressional level.
You'd hope so. There's 3 kind of legislation that I'm tracking, right, that probably should use some federal legislation. That's probably the cannabis laws to clean up all the different state laws. You have one federal law. You can't have states saying different things. Same thing with sports betting. If you have a federal law, all the states are going to just be uniform. Same thing with the drinking age. That's why it's 21 across the country. Now, with respect to cannabis and sports betting, I don't think there's some national cry to get those to have national laws. But we do know that constituencies across the country want a national name, image, and likeness bill. And that's exactly, the reasoning that we're talking about. We don't want to have this massive recruiting edge to certain schools in certain states. We want everyone to have the same laws across the country. So, I think there's about 4 or 5 bills at least at the federal level. So I do think that we're going to have federal name, image, and likeness at some point in 2021. I don't think it's going to be before July 1st, so there's going to be a period of time where there is chaos. But that's the best bet. That's what the NCAA is really rooting for. They're rooting for some entity to come in and create it across the board. To dispel one notion that I'm seeing online, if the NCAA does come forward with their own version of name, image, and likeness, that's great for the other 45 states in the country. But if you're in one of the 5 states with better laws, right, you're still gaining some advantage. So federal name, image, and likeness is the way to kind of solve all those problems.
Well, does Georgia have a better law? There was a note last week that Brian Kemp, the governor, the NIL rules he signed in said that they could actually take money from some of the big athletes, pool it to pay other athletes. They could take up to 75% of an individual's money. Wait a second, what? That's legal?
What's legal? I mean, they're passing a law. There's no law in the book, so they're free to do whatever they want unless the federal government steps in and creates some type of different law. I mean, that's not the law I would have passed, and it's not consistent with the other laws passed across the country, but I understand why they're doing it. It's, these other sports, right? I'm not saying anything, so new, but football and basketball basically pay the bills for every single other sport, men's football and obviously men's basketball. And that money, if it's only going to football and basketball players, you have a fear that it's going to destroy the other sports. So I see exactly why they're doing it, but I'm not sure it's so fair. I mean, if we're trying to make it fair, right? If you're able to make the money, it should go in your pocket. But I think there are laws that they can take up to 75% of any individual athlete's income and then distribute it as they see fit across the sports student body, which I think is a little bit too favorable to the schools.
Legal Insider Dan Lust is on Cofield Company. You mentioned Mississippi. All right, well, Brett Favre and Mississippi have a deal here. Can you explain what's going on with this money that he got a while back, and now people keep reporting that he owes $600,000? Who did he borrow it from? When does he have to pay it back? Is there a deadline? Is he going to jail? Like, what's going on here?
I can't really make sense of it. Brett Favre's obviously made millions in his career. I've seen this story kicking around for a while. I can't really tell you. I mean, he's obviously not going to go to jail unless there's some type of criminal charges that are filed. But it's not really a good look. And I think at least the last I saw was, it was a question of whether he even appeared for this or no-showed it. So I mean, we're skirting around potential criminal charges, but I don't see Brett Favre going to prison over this. But I mean, the man is not short of change, so hopefully this thing gets cleared up.
All right, Dan, stick with us here because I always get to some goofy stuff. So I got a goofy one for you. I saw a New York Post headline talking about Bill Gates and what he's going to be giving to his kids in the inheritance, and it's a weird headline because it says his kids are only getting $10 million apiece. Listen, if I'm Steve Gates, like, I want more money. Do kids actually have any legal recourse when, their parents give them, it's $10 million, but it, like, in the big scheme of things, it's kind of nothing. I want to sue my dad.
I mean, listen, you're 100% right. To put it in perspective, there was some story I heard, again, this is all kind of hearsay or double hearsay, whatever you want to call it, but before the divorce papers were filed, before they announced the divorce, I think Bill Gates transferred about $1.8 billion.
Yeah.
I got to work with B's. Transfer that to his wife. So there's always reasons that you would. There's always various reasons depending on what state you file for divorce and what could affect the kids and what's considered marital property and whatnot. But $1.8 billion to the wife. The truth is, kids have very little. I mean, in terms of custody and stuff. I mean, they're always going to act in the best interest of the child. But in terms of financial payment, that's really only something that's up for debate when you're having an estate issue when someone passes away. But for a divorce, it's really between husband and wife, and then they got to figure out, visitation and alimony and all that stuff. But what's going into the kids' pockets? That's not really up to them. But listen, $10 million. That's a lot of money.
Pretty good.
You know what? That's a little bit of seed money to do whatever they want to do in an entrepreneurial sense. And I'm sure the Gates name will be more powerful than maybe $10 million could be.
Yeah, there's not going to be a lot of people on my side showing outrage for the Gates kids only getting $10 million. Let's close on this one. later in the summer, I'm planning vacations. I want to go on a cruise. I want to leave from, say, like Lauderdale, right? I don't want to step foot in Florida, though. And I want to be on a fully vaccinated cruise ship. DeSantis has all these rules. What the hell is going to happen with cruises? Are they going to open up? Can DeSantis be like, hey, you know what? Everyone on the cruise, you don't have to be vaccinated. What is going to happen to the cruise industry with Riverboat Ron around?
Listen, I was in Florida maybe about 3 months ago to visit my wife's grandparents. Florida is basically a different country at this point. It is. I mean, for better or for worse, it's backwards in some sense. But I saw the one that popped across my radar. There's some sports that are requiring you to have a vaccination to attend events. Ron says no. He says that's unlawful, and he's not going to go for it. So cruises, arenas. I don't know. I tend to like some clean federal law. For better or for worse, if the laws are applied equally and similar across the country, we have some consistency. But now you go to vacation in Florida, literally the laws are different. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to the cruise industry. If the cruise is taking off within Florida jurisdiction, that's the law of the land. As they say, guys, when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. So, you got to go by the laws of Florida. As they say, you got to be a Florida man when in Florida.
Yes. Dan, tell people how they can get to your podcast, your legal podcast.
Yes, the podcast is called